Eddie. After John Kramer's death, Detective Mark Hoffman carried on the legacy. Two of his new victims were Simone and Eddie, both placed in an abandoned factory with vicious head traps fixed in place. The moment they moved, pins pulled free and a TV flickered on.
Hello, I want to play a game.
The puppet appeared, accusing them of ruining lives through their reckless work. Their test was brutal. 60 seconds to cut off their own flesh and place it on a scale. Whoever gave up more would live. The loser's head would be pierced by drills. When the countdown began, the screws on their headpieces briefly drove into their skulls before pausing. Eddie, bulkier and with plenty to work with, wasted no time. He ripped his shirt open and started hacking at his stomach, each sawing motion tearing away bloodied chunks he tossed onto the scale. Simone tried the same, but her thin frame offered little. Instead, she tied off her arm with tubing, took the knife, and tried to slice through her flesh. Eddie hacked off piece after piece, blood spilling as he tossed them onto the scale. Simone screamed in frustration, then shifted higher on her arm, cutting faster as the drills pressed deeper into her temple. Finally, with seconds left, she seized the cleaver and hacked at her own arm in a frenzy. With one final swing, her forearm severed completely. She hurled it onto the scale, the weight tipping in her favor. Eddie, outmatched, had no chance. The timer expired and the drills ripped into his skull, killing him. Simone collapsed, clutching her stump, sobbing in shock at what she had done to survive. Obie Tate. The group's search dragged them into the basement, where a hooded figure sat unnervingly still at a table. Xavier, never one to pass up a chance for violence, shoved a flashlight in its face, ready to swing, until Jonas ripped off the hood and revealed a mannequin. Imagine Jigsaw shopping in the clearance aisle for it. Pinned to its chest was an envelope marked Obie. Inside was a tape that flipped the script.
One is my gift to you for helping me kidnap the others.
Obie wasn't just another unlucky contestant. He'd actually helped Jigsaw abduct the others. Naturally, this went over about as well as you'd expect. Laura immediately recognized him as her kidnapper. The group turned hostile, and suddenly Obie found himself negotiating. He agreed to crawl into a massive furnace for the antidotes, but only if one of them was his. At first, it looked like a win. He grabbed the first syringe with ease, but when he yanked on the second, chained in place, the furnace door slammed shut and flames roared to life. Through the heat and smoke, Obie spotted a devil painted on the wall, its finger pointing at a valve, the real way out. The clue had been crystal clear. Once you're in hell, only the devil can help you out. But instead of reaching for salvation, Obie froze, screaming for help through a small window. The others smashed it open, but by then, Obie was already roasting like a human campfire. Timothy Young. Jeff's third test came with a cheery little sign. Here's your chance, subtle. Inside, he found Timothy Young, the drunk driver who had killed his son, locked into one of Jigsaw's most sadistic inventions, the rack. Each limb plus his head clamped into mechanical restraints designed to twist until every bone in his body snapped like dry twigs. Dangling from Timothy's neck was a tape spelling out the rules.
He made a terrible mistake.
Jeff could let the trap run and see justice or vengeance served, or he could choose forgiveness and risk his own life to grab the key from a box rigged with a shotgun. The machine whirred to life, and Timothy's right arm bent until it snapped with a gut-wrenching crack. His screams filled the room, bouncing off the walls like a soundtrack Jeff had spent years fantasizing about. Judge Halden, dragged along for moral support, begged Jeff to act. But Jeff stayed frozen, forcing himself to watch, his anger colliding with a hollow sense of disgust. Then came Timothy's second arm. Then his legs. Each twist punctuated with a scream and a sickening break. Halden finally snapped himself, calling Jeff a murderer for doing nothing. Jeff shoved him aside, insisting he'd dreamed of this for years. Finally, Jeff ran for the shotgun box. He actually managed to pry the key out. Just in time for the mechanism to fire, blowing Halden's head open like a watermelon at a shooting range. Horrified, Jeff spun back toward Timothy, only to see the machine already cranking on his head. Desperate, Jeff climbed onto the device, screaming that he forgave him, begging it to stop. But the rack had no interest in forgiveness. With one last brutal twist, it snapped Timothy's neck, leaving his body limp and lifeless while Jeff was left standing in the wreckage of his rage. Adam Stanheight. After being abandoned in the bathroom, Adam's strength ebbed away hour by hour. The gunshot wound, dehydration, and starvation turned him into a shell of himself, barely clinging to consciousness in that rotting tomb. Eventually, Amanda Young returned. Guilt gnawed at her. Adam's ghost stalked her dreams, a reminder of the man she had left to rot. Whether out of pity or her own warped idea of mercy, she decided to set him free. Her mercy came in the form of a plastic bag. Amanda slipped it over his head, and even in his broken state, Adam fought back, scratching, clawing, desperate for air, but his body betrayed him. His head cracked against the toilet during the struggle, dazing him, draining what little fight remained. Moments later, the bag did its work. Adam slipped into unconsciousness, then silence. After everything he endured, Jigsaw's games hadn't killed him. Mercy did. Cecil Adams. Cecil's test was one of John Kramer's earliest experiments, and one of his most personal. Strapped to a chair, Cecil woke in panic, thrashing uselessly against the restraints. Then he saw John standing there, calm as ever. Terrified, Cecil pleaded, apologizing for Gideon's death and begging for mercy. But John didn't come for revenge. At least not officially. This was about
a tool to reclaim your life.
John revealed the device. 8 blades lined horizontally in front of Cecil's mouth. His choice was simple and sadistic. Press forward into the knives to free himself, or sit still and bleed out where he sat. Cecil cursed, spat, screamed at him, but desperation always wins eventually. With a guttural cry, he rammed his face into the knives, steel splitting his flesh and leaving his face carved like a butcher's experiment. Then the chair gave way, collapsing beneath him. The man was free. Instead of showing any gratitude, he immediately lunged at John in blind rage, proving once and for all that some people just don't learn their lesson. John sidestepped effortlessly, and the wild attack sent him crashing into a cage of razor wire. Trapped and shredding himself with every thrash, Cecil howled in pain until his body gave out. In the end, the knives weren't what killed him. It was the same rage that had defined him all along. Charles Salomon. Once the door sealed behind them, Jigsaw's puppet appeared on a screen.
Hello, and welcome to the next lesson.
The new test was clear. 4 blast-proof chambers, but only 3 usable keys hidden in glass jars dangling from the ceiling. Someone had to be left behind. Panic erupted as the timer began. Malik smashed a jar but grabbed a useless blank key. Charles, deciding Malik was dead weight, turned violent, beating him with a rod and declaring only the strongest deserved to live. He then shattered jars one after another, while Britt and Luba snatched real keys and slipped into safety chambers. When the final key dropped, Malik reached for it, only for Charles to stomp his arm and sneer before taking it. But betrayal caught up with him. Luba, seething, struck Charles from behind with a rod, stealing back his chance and locking herself away. Malik scrambled into the last chamber just before the timer hit 0. Charles wasn't so lucky. As he staggered up, the bombs detonated, shredding him where he stood. Dan, Sachi, and Perez. In the FBI's lab, the walls finally closed in on Hoffman. While technician Sachi worked on restoring the damaged tape, Perez and Erickson circled him like sharks, prodding at his story. Perez pressed him about Strom, calling it strange.
I don't understand Strom's motivation.
That she never noticed instability in a man she'd worked with for years. Erickson added more weight, suggesting maybe Strom had killed Seth Baxter to frame Hoffman. Yet something still didn't fit. Then Erickson dropped the bomb. Forensic results showed Strom was already dead when his fingerprints turned up at Simone and Eddie's crime scene. The evidence pointed only one way. At that exact moment, Sachi restored the tape. Hoffman's voice rang out clear.
You're feeling helpless.
Cornered, Hoffman struck with cold precision. In seconds, he slashed Erickson's throat open, scalded Perez with boiling coffee, then yanked Sachi into his grip as a human shield. Perez tried to fight through the burns, firing her weapon, but her bullets hit Sachi instead. Hoffman rushed her and drove his knife into her abdomen again and again, demanding to know who else knew the truth. Perez gasped with her dying breath.
Everyone.
Hoffman snarled back liar before delivering the final stab. With Erickson bleeding out and Sachi dead, Hoffman staged the scene. He retrieved Strom's severed hand from a cooler in his car, planting prints across weapons and equipment. He soaked the lab, the bodies, and even the still-breathing Erickson in gasoline. Locking eyes with the dying agent, Hoffman smiled faintly, then lit the match. Flames consumed the lab as he disappeared into the night, leaving nothing but fire and corpses in his wake. Anna and Ryan woke up chained in a milking room, their legs shackled to opposite walls. Their captor removed his hood, revealing none other than John Kramer himself. Anna immediately panicked, while Ryan smugly insisted he'd already passed his trial by losing a leg. John corrected him. Amputation was punishment, not progress. He then reminded Ryan of his real crime, a drunken stunt as a teenager that distracted his best friend, causing a fatal crash that killed 2 people. Ryan confessed but begged for mercy. Next came Anna's turn. She tried to play innocent, even reminding John of how she had once supported him after his cancer diagnosis. But John knew the truth. Anna had murdered her own baby in a rage, then framed her husband, Matthew. He was imprisoned, driven to suicide while she walked free. Her excuses fell silent. John declared this their final test. He unveiled a shotgun contraption, loading a single shell and calling it their key to freedom. Then he left, locking them in. Once alone, Anna decided subtlety was overrated. She grabbed the shotgun, aimed at Ryan, and ignored his warning that the puzzle was meant for cooperation, not murder. She pulled the trigger anyway. The gun backfired, exploding in her face. She crumpled to the floor, dead in an instant. Ryan crawled toward the destroyed shell and discovered the grim truth. The keys to their shackles had been hidden inside the shotgun shell all along. However, when Anna attempted to fire the weapon, the explosion had destroyed them. Anna's green key was bent beyond use, and his own yellow key had been snapped in half by the blast. Ryan broke down, sobbing to Anna's lifeless body, telling her,
We could have been free, Anna.
Chained to the milking room wall, Ryan had no choice but to wait. Eventually, his body gave in, either to blood loss from his mangled leg or simple dehydration. Alone, forgotten, and shackled until the end, Ryan became one more corpse in Jigsaw's barn of horrors. Dena. Dena's test took place in front of an audience of horrified shoppers at the Welthammer store. She awoke chained to a massive metal plate dangling above a circular saw. Brad and Ryan strapped to the same contraption, both facing her and each other with deadly blades between them. As the crowd outside banged helplessly on the glass, the familiar puppet rolled in on its tricycle.
Choose who will drop out of this triangle.
Its message was cruel and direct. Brad and Ryan had both committed crimes in Dena's name, and now they had to decide who lived. If neither man chose within 60 seconds, Dena would die instead. The timer started, the saws roared to life, and chaos followed. Ryan shoved the blades toward Brad, who fought back with everything he had. When Brad seemed to gain the upper hand, Dena suddenly told him she loved him, urging him to kill Ryan. Instead, Ryan surged back and drove the blade into Brad's chest as he screamed in agony. Now furious, Ryan turned on Dena. She confessed she'd only told Brad she loved him to save herself, but swore Ryan was the one she truly cared for. He didn't believe her. Realizing they were both being manipulated, Ryan convinced Brad that Dena wasn't worth either of their lives. When the clock ran out, Dena was lowered into the waiting saw. The blade split her stomach open, spraying blood across the men as she shrieked in rage and pain. In the end, the only person Dena managed to destroy was herself, as Brad and Ryan probably became best friends forever, because nothing bonds two guys like surviving a love triangle with power tools.